Now, a remarkable scientific discovery has been made in China. Researchers say they found the skull of what they believe is a new species of human.
For decades, scientists believed a simple rule about ancient DNA. If a human lived, their genetic story must survive somewhere in the living world. Even if a culture disappeared, even if a language died, even if history forgot their name, their DNA would still echo faintly in modern populations. That assumption just collapsed. In Western China, archaeologists uncovered a 3,500-year-old mummy whose genetic profile does not match any living population on Earth. Not in Asia, not in Europe, not anywhere. This was not a damaged sample or an incomplete result. The DNA was intact, readable, and deeply unsettling. One human body preserved a genetic story. The present no longer remembers. The place where this happened shouldn't exist at all. Deep in Western China lies a vast desert, known for erasing almost everything. Rain is scarce, summers burn, winters freeze. The soil is saturated with salt instead of moisture. Life struggles here. Organic material usually doesn't last long enough to leave a trace. And yet, this desert does something strange. Instead of destroying bodies, it freezes them in time. The soil pulls moisture out of anything buried within it. Flesh dries before bacteria can act. Fabric hardens instead of rotting. Wood stiffens rather than collapsing. Temperature swings slow chemical reactions to a crawl. Day after day, year after year, the environment shuts down decay itself. No one planned this. No one engineered it. The desert did the work. That's why this region has become one of the most unexpected human archives on Earth. Bodies survived alongside clothing, faux food, leather, hair, and even genetic material. In most climates, DNA is the first thing to vanish. Here, it endured. And because the physical body and the biological record survived together, scientists were able to ask questions they almost never get to ask. One burial in particular forced them to stop and rethink everything. The grave was ordinary. That's what makes it disturbing. It wasn't deep. It wasn't protected by stone. It wasn't hidden in a tomb. The burial belonged to a woman who lived around 1500 BCE. Her body was placed in a narrow wooden coffin shape, like a small boat, and lowered into shallow desert soil. Wooden posts were driven into the ground to mark the spot, not to protect it. There was no embalming, no removal of organs, no chemical treatment, no attempt to preserve anything. Whoever buried her fully expected her body to disappear. They were wrong. When archaeologists opened the grave thousands of years later, they weren't looking at a skeleton. Skin was still present. Hair remained attached to her scalp. Eyelashes were visible. The shape of her face had not collapsed. This wasn't a reconstruction. This was her actual appearance. The preservation shocked researchers because it violated every expectation about burial in such conditions. But the body didn't just preserve her face. It preserved her life. She was dressed in wool garments, not ceremonial clothing, but everyday wear. The fabric showed repairs. Seams had been reinforced. Threads had been replaced. These were clothes worn repeatedly, not prepared for burial. Wool production requires domesticated animals. It requires herding, planning, and seasonal stability. This immediately ruled out a purely nomadic survival strategy. She belonged to a community that managed resources carefully. Near her body, archaeologists found dairy products believed to be early forms of cheese. Producing dairy isn't simple. It requires timing, processing knowledge, and the ability to store for food. Grains like wheat and millet were also present, crops that don't grow naturally in desert conditions. This meant her community either cultivated them with care or obtained them through exchange. Her bones told another story. They showed years of physical strain. joint wear patterns consistent with long-distance walking, heavy lifting, and repetitive labor. This was not a person sheltered from hardship. Her body recorded a lifetime of work. Everything about the burial suggested an ordinary life lived under difficult conditions. And then scientists looked deeper. When researchers extracted DNA from her remains, they expected a familiar result. The region sits between East Asia, Central Asia, and Europe. Historically, it's been a crossroads. Genetic mixing should have been obvious. It wasn't. Her genome did not align with any living population. At first, scientists suspected error. Ancient DNA is fragile. Contamination can distort results. Samples can degrade. Lab mistakes happen. So the data was checked again and again. The mismatch remained. Her genetic profile didn't partially match modern groups. It didn't sit between populations. It didn't resemble diluted ancestry. It stood apart. Further analysis linked her ancestry to an ancient North Eurasian-related lineage, a group known only from very old remains scattered across prehistoric Eurasia. Most traces of this lineage survive today only as fragments mixed into later populations. In her case, the lineage appeared unusually complete. This suggested something unexpected. Her community had remained genetically isolated for a very long time. That idea challenged decades of migration models. Scholars believed populations in this region were shaped by constant movement and absorption. Her DNA suggested the opposite. A group that endured generation after generation without significant mixing. Still, one individual could be an anomaly. So scientists searched for confirmation. They found it. A second mummy from the same desert region discovered miles away, buried centuries apart, with a different grave layout and burial pattern. Not a relative, not from the same household, not from the same generation. When scientists analyzed the second genome, the same rare genetic signature appeared again. This changed everything. Two individuals, different sites, different centuries, same genetic pattern. Contamination was ruled out. Samples were processed independently. Controls were checked. Multiple labs reviewed the data. The result held. This was not coincidence. It was population-level evidence. A human group lived in this desert for 4 centuries carrying a genetic identity that no longer exists in full form today. That realization forced a final question. If this population survived for so long, why does no living group share their DNA now? The answer isn't dramatic. There was no sudden extinction, no catastrophe, no mass disappearance. According to geneticists, the explanation is slower and quieter. Genetic absorption. Small, isolated populations can survive for long periods, but they are fragile. When larger populations begin moving into nearby regions, contact becomes inevitable. Not always through conflict, often through intermarriage. Children born from mixed unions carry genes from both sides. Over generations, rare genetic traits become diluted, not erased instantly, but weakened slowly until they fall below detectable levels. Culture can survive this process. DNA often doesn't. Clothing styles, food traditions, and burial customs can be passed on through learning. Genus cannot. Once the chain of inheritance breaks, the genetic signal fades, even if the people, themselves continue living. This means her population didn't vanish overnight. They were absorbed into expanding groups. Their lineage blended into the background of human history. What makes her case extraordinary is timing. Her DNA survived long enough for us to see it clearly before it disappeared completely. That's what makes this discovery unsettling. It reminds us that modern genetic maps don't show everything that once existed. They only show what survived the longest. Entire human lineages lived, adapted, struggled, and vanished quietly without leaving descendants we can recognize today. This woman wasn't mysterious because she was unique. She was mysterious because she wasn't. She represented a real population that history forgot. Her body survived. Her DNA survived. Her people did not. And without one desert that refused to let decay do its job, we never would have known they were here at all. She was mysterious because she wasn't. She represented a real population that history forgot. Her body survived. Her DNA survived. Her people did not. And without one desert that refused to let decay do its job, we never would have known they were here at all.